Oops, moved.
Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of the Urban Homesteading channel. If this is your first visit to our channel, we want to extend to you a very warm welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Today is your birthday, happy birthday! Today we're going to talk about some woodworking myths and how they affect your work. And they are myths because they are widely accepted as true, when in reality they are not true. And might complicate something you do or make you make some choices that you don't necessarily have to do. So the first one we're going to discuss is the fact that everyone says wood outside will rot in the elements and you need to do something to protect it. That is simply a myth. Wood outside will rot only if it is in constant contact with water. If it can dry, it will not rot. So you don't always have to protect things that you put outside. So that is myth number one. And let's go outside and I want to show you something that demonstrates that point. So this pallet has been out here for over 2 years. It is just a pallet. It had no protection, no paint, no stain, nothing on it. And as you can see, structurally so there is no rot in it. It has changed color, of course. All wood will silver outside, right? Mm-hmm. But it has zero evidence of rot. In fact, the part that you see here missing, we removed and we built a very nice towel rug. Mm-hmm. And it has a very nice silver color after we sand it a little bit.
Yep.
So this is totally a myth. Wood will not rot outside unless it is constantly in contact with water. In that case it will. And that's why when you buy pressure treated things, they say contact rated, water contact rated.
Right.
That is the issue, is water contact, is not getting wet. So this myth, I think, is busted. What do you think, Mrs. Wizard?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, who knows how many years this has been sitting out here?
At least
it was here when we moved in to, some time ago. Clearly it has been here for quite some time in the elements.
And there is it's still...
Yeah, it's a very solid piece of wood that we use the pieces. It was kind of hard to cut because it was still so hard.
Right. And if you can see here, you can see the silvery. This actually, a lot of its life was in the ground, to be honest. We lifted it because we wanted to cut it, if you remember, right? So even in the ground, because the ground it was not in a puddle of water, it still did not rot at all.
And it does get very, damp out here. There's some mud areas. Water does collect from time to time when it rains.
Now, what does that mean? It means do not use wood directly in contact, like do not put it in a post, that will rot, right? Do not put it in the ground, that will rot. But don't be afraid to make a decoration or something like that it will rot because of the rain. That's the point, right? Rain, as long as the wood can dry, will not rot wood. Just a myth. And now busted. Myth number 2. The more glue you put, the better off you are, right? I see a lot of woodworkers put wood together and then when they clamp it, there is a total mess. There is glue everywhere, right? This is not only a myth, but it's harmful. If you put wood on both surfaces, it is much more likely that the two pieces will slide and you will have a hard time aligning them, right? Also, the more glue you have in a joint, the longer it will take to dry. So you don't need to do that. You're wasting glue. You're making a mess that you have to clean it afterwards. So put enough glue to have a nice even coat on one surface, right?
Right.
You will still have a little bit of squeeze out, but it's not going to be as horrible, right? You won't have to do a lot of cleaning. And here is Atlas back. A really associated myth is you need to tight with all your might your clamps when you glue surfaces. Also not true. The goal is not to make all glue squeeze out of the joint. The point is to keep the joint tight enough so as the glue dries, it makes a nice bond, right?
Yes.
You don't have to over tighten the clamps. First of all, if you over tighten them, you risk to create a bow in the joint, right? Mm-hmm. And also, very often it's going to move. It causes all kind of trouble, and it's not necessary. Don't overdo it. So is that the myth 2.5? I don't know.
But that squeeze out is a problem for more than one reason, because if you get squeeze out along the edge of a piece that you were, for instance, going to stain, that part of the wood will be very difficult to stain.
Yes, even if you paint it, it will be a different, you will see.
Yep.
All right, so let's put this myth to rest as well. I've been thinking about this myth for some time now, and unfortunately my timing is very bad because another channel broke that myth up, and that is that the end grain should not get glued, right? Because this is a very weak bond.
Right.
Now, I was giving a thing to this myth, and there's really no reality. The end grain has a lot of, what do we call them? It's like you put a lot of straws together, like sipping straws.
Yep.
So, as long as you put the glue, let it sip in a little bit. Thank you, you protected us. Let it sip a little bit, and maybe this is an exception that you should put glue on both sides, right? Make it sip in both sides, and then connect it. This will be not only a good joint, but technically stronger than a side-to-side joint, which is this kind, right? Mm-hmm. The other thing is exactly what I did now. When they demonstrate the weakness of the joint, they put a joint like this, and they say, oh, this is very hard to break, right? And then they put a joint like this and say, oh, this is so easy to break. Well, you can see the surface area is much different, right? It is not an easy, a fair comparison.
Right.
Now, my take on this, and I know a lot of people got their own take from the other videos that they circulated in YouTube. My take of this is that you should put glue on grain ends, on grain joints, right? It doesn't mean though you should do no other connection, right? I would still do a pocket, I would still do a biscuit or a loose tenon, right? But it is good to put glue as well. It just makes the joint stronger, that's all, right? Mm-hmm. So just change that behavior. When you do edge to edge joints or even edge to side joints like this, which is probably one of the most common joints in woodworking,
Right.
put glue here and then put some other material. Our most common way of joining this way in this channel is probably pockets, right?
Right.
But there are other ways to do it. So I would say this is also a busted myth, and if you want, there are plenty of channels talking about this specific one throughout YouTube, and I think that was myth number 3. And here we're in front of our table saw, and I want to talk about another myth, and that is that you should always have your riving knife when you make cuts. Well, that is actually not true. Riving knives are sized, and routinely they're sized for the blade that came with your saw, right? You can see, for example, here, you might want to come on top. Our riving knife is much smaller than the thickness of our blade here, right? Because it's a dado stack.
Yep.
In this case, the riving knife will not do anything to stop an accident, right? Also, an even more dangerous thing is if you put a smaller blade. Like Miss Wizard likes the finishing blade we have, which is thinner than actually our normal blade, which is a crosscut blade. So a thinner blade, when it tries to go through the riving knife, it will actually hit the knife because the curve is thinner than this side, right? Again, riving knives are sized, they are not all one size. So either you have to have enough riving knives to change them every time you change the blade, or it could be more dangerous because as you push, the one or the other side will hit the riving knife and it will stop your progress, right? And you will try to figure out why you cannot push. And that can create a more dangerous situation than a riving knife. The other common discussion is that the riving knife will always avoid kickback. That is not true. What the riving knife does, and let me see if I can demonstrate a little bit. And I think we've shown it in our channel. Let's say this was a solid piece of wood. As you cut wood, you create a curve, right? You see that?
Yep.
If the wood has tension in it, after the blade, it will try to close. You see that, what I mean?
Right.
Now the riving knife is there, it doesn't prevent the glue to close, so the blade is not pinched by the two pieces of wood. This is the major function of the riving knife, is not to avoid kickback, contrary to popular belief. Just be safe. I do use the riving knife, but we don't use it always. It depends on the blade we use and it depends what we're doing, right?
Right.
And when that happens, I mean, for example, when we were cutting one of these 4x4s, it did close on us. A riving knife would not have made any difference because of how we were doing that cut, right? It
Yep.
didn't even reach the riving knife.
Right.
So don't go into false security that if you put a riving knife all of a sudden you will not have kickback or you will not have problems. Always be alert. If your Arabic knife is the correct size, use it. But if it is not the correct size, it can actually be more dangerous than not use it. So would you say this myth is also busted, Miss Wizard?
I would say so.
So use driving knives in a judicial manner. And here we are in our last myth, and this is myth number 5, and really relates to fastening, right? We have all been taught, and definitely we have done it in our channel. You've probably have many times Miss Wizard say, you're not straight, right? And we're talking about fasteners. That applies to both nails and screws. And what we're told is that you go straight down, right? The problem with going straight down, especially with nails, is that this represents the least amount of resistance. If you remember when we removed the first set of stairs that we had in the saw, it was very easy to separate the nails, right? We put the nails straight in and all took a little bit of pressure with a crowbar and they came off, right?
Right.
The correct way, and I start noticing that when we start buying second-hand furniture and we start redoing them, you will see that in the older days, they will put them sideways and they will put them like this, like one this way and the other this way. And as you can see, that makes it much more resistant to just lift, right?
Yeah.
Both for nails and for screws. So unless the danger is that you will come on the other side, don't do that, of course, right? But if you have meat, and you don't have necessarily to be so exaggerated as I was here, but go in an angle. Again, you need to be judicious. Don't get out. Don't damage your finish. But if you can go in an angle, it gives you a much better grip.
Yep.
And it will allow your joints and everything you connect to stay together for a much bigger period of time. And I think this is our 5 woodworking myths that by changing your behavior, understanding the myths, hopefully you're going to have better products, better results, and longer lasting products. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and our 5 myths will help you do better work in your woodworking and better understand how woodworking works. If you did enjoy this episode, we will appreciate a thumbs up. If you didn't, smash the other button twice. Share, like, subscribe, and let us know what else you might want to watch in our channel. From the Urban Homesteading channel, Dr. Wizard and Mrs. Wizard, stay safe, wash your hands, get immunized, put your masks on. So we're going to see you next time with another episode. Farewell, friends.